The receipt fluttered to the floor from Thad's jacket pocket like a confession on paper. I stared at it for a long moment before picking it up, my fingers trembling slightly as I read the details. Savor Restaurant, $342 for dinner for two, including a bottle of Chateau Margaux. My husband hadn't taken me to Saveur in over 2 years, claiming it was too expensive for regular dinners. Yet here was proof that just 3 days ago, on a night he told me he was working late, he had splurged on someone else. I'm Ainsley Blackwood, 38 years old, and until that moment, I thought I had a solid marriage. Thad and I had been together for 12 years, married for 10. We met at a charity fundraiser in Chicago, where his confidence and ambition had swept me off my feet. He was already making a name for himself at a prestigious law firm, while I was climbing the ladder in marketing. We were the power couple our friends envied. Successful, attractive, compatible. At least that's what I believed. Standing in our walk-in closet with that receipt in my hand, I felt a sudden chill wash over me. This wasn't the first sign something was wrong. For months, little discrepancies had been piling up. Mysterious phone calls he took in another room, late nights at the office that couldn't be verified, weekends spent golfing with clients that left no tan lines on his fair skin. But like so many people who don't want to see the truth, I had created explanations that preserved my world. That night, when Thad came home, I said nothing about the receipt. I greeted him with a kiss on the cheek, asked about his day, and served the pasta primavera I'd prepared. He complimented the meal half-heartedly, while checking his phone under the table, thinking I couldn't see. His wedding ring gleamed under our dining room light, a symbol that now felt hollow. "Busy day tomorrow?" I asked casually, twirling pasta around my fork. "Yeah, the Harrison case is going to trial next month, so we're in full prep mode," he said, eyes still on his phone. "I might be late again tomorrow. Don't wait up." I nodded, studying his face. Thad was still handsome at 41, his dark hair now tastefully flecked with silver at the temples, giving him that distinguished look his female clients probably found irresistible. His blue eyes, once so present when they looked at me, now seemed to look through me. "I was thinking of calling Maeve this weekend," I said, mentioning my best friend. "Maybe have lunch with her while you're golfing." "Good idea," he replied too quickly. "You should get out more." That night, I couldn't sleep. While Thad snored softly beside me, I stared at the ceiling, mentally cataloging all the changes in our relationship. The gradual decrease in physical intimacy, the way he no longer shared details about his cases or clients, the increasing time spent apart. In the darkness, I finally admitted to myself what I had been avoiding. My husband was having an affair. Once I acknowledged this possibility, I became a detective in my own marriage. The next morning, I waited until Thad left for work before I began my investigation. First, I checked our credit card statements online, finding more restaurants and bars on dates when he was supposedly working late. Next, I examined his laundry, discovering a faint scent of unfamiliar perfume on his dress shirts, something floral and youthful, nothing like my signature sandalwood fragrance. I called Maeve from my home office, my voice shaking as I shared my suspicions. "I think Thad is cheating on me," I said, the words tasting bitter. "Honey, are you sure?" Maeve asked, concern evident in her voice. "Maybe there's another explanation." "I'm gathering evidence," I replied, surprised by my own methodical approach. "But my gut says something's very wrong." "Whatever you need, I'm here," Maeve promised. "Just don't confront him until you're certain." Men like Thad are good at turning things around. That afternoon, I did something I'd never done before. I checked Thad's email. We had a shared account for household matters, but he also used it occasionally for work when he was home. I wasn't proud of myself, but desperation had overridden my principles. For 20 minutes, I found nothing unusual. Bills, newsletters, communications with clients that seemed legitimate. Then I noticed a folder labeled Travel Docs that hadn't been there the last time I'd used the account. With a racing heart, I clicked it open. Inside were confirmation emails for airline tickets to Bora Bora, departing in 3 weeks. First-class seats for 2 passengers, Thaddeus Blackwood and Brielle Summers. A reservation for the overwater bungalow at the St. Regis Resort, the exact one I had shown Thad in a travel magazine last year, saying it was my dream vacation. 7 nights, all-inclusive romantic package with private dinners on the beach and couples massages. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely continue scrolling, but what I found next made my blood run cold. There were emails between Thad and this Brielle woman going back 6 months. I forced myself to read them, each word a dagger to my heart. Can't wait to feel the sun on our skin in our private paradise, she had written. Just us, finally, with no more hiding. 3 more weeks until I can wake up beside you every morning, Thad had replied. This trip will be the beginning of our real life together. I felt physically ill. This wasn't just a fling or a one-night mistake. This was a full-blown relationship, complete with promises and future plans. I searched for more information about Brielle Summers and quickly found her. A paralegal at Thad's firm, 28 years old, according to her LinkedIn profile. I discovered her Instagram account, which was public, and scrolled through images of a stunning young woman with long blonde hair and the confident smile of someone who believed the world was hers for the taking. There were no photos of Thad on her social media, but there were several cryptic posts about waiting for the right moment and patience bringing the greatest rewards. Curious. In one photo from 2 months ago, she was wearing a bracelet I recognized, a platinum and sapphire piece I had noticed on our credit card statement. Thad had told me it was a gift for his mother's birthday. I closed the laptop and sat in stunned silence, trying to process what I'd discovered. My husband of 10 years was planning to leave me, but hadn't found the courage to tell me to my face. Instead, he was sneaking around, building another life in parallel to ours, spending our money to romance a woman nearly a decade younger. The pain was excruciating, but as minutes passed, another emotion began to surface. Anger. Cold, clarifying anger that cut through the fog of shock. I deserved better than this cowardly betrayal. I deserved the truth, and if Thad wouldn't give it to me directly, I would force his hand. An idea began to form in my mind. Bold, perhaps crazy, but somehow fitting for the magnitude of his deception. I reopened the laptop and looked again at the flight information. Delta Airlines, Flight 1245 to Los Angeles, connecting to Air Tahiti Nui Flight 841 to Papeete. I opened a new browser window and searched for available seats on those same flights. There were still first-class tickets available on both legs of the journey. Expensive, yes, but we had money. Our joint savings account held more than enough. This was, after all, supposed to be for a trip we would take together someday. I smiled grimly as I selected a seat right next to where Thad and his mistress would be sitting. Row 4, Seat C, right beside their seats A and B. The confirmation email arrived moments later. In 3 weeks, I would give my husband the surprise of his life. I wasn't going to confront him before then, wasn't going to give him the chance to prepare excuses or manage the situation. I wanted to see his face when his carefully constructed double life collapsed around him at 35,000 feet, with nowhere to run. That evening, when Thad came home, I greeted him with a smile that felt strange on my face. We ate dinner, talked about trivial things, and watched a movie side by side on the couch, all while I imagined the scene that would unfold on that airplane. When he casually mentioned he had a business conference in 3 weeks, I nodded sympathetically. "That's too bad," I said, amazed at how steady my voice sounded. "I'll miss you." "I'll miss you too," he replied, not meeting my eyes. "It's just 4 days. I'll be back before you know it. 4 days, not 7. Another lie to add to the growing collection. I leaned my head against his shoulder, feeling like an actress in a bizarre play. "I hope you'll have a good trip," I said softly. And I meant it, though not in the way he assumed. Because his trip was going to be unforgettable. just not in the way he had planned. The 3 weeks leading up to the flight were the strangest of my life. Each morning, I woke up beside a man I thought I knew, only to remember that he was essentially a stranger. Each night, I lay next to him, pretending that my world hadn't shattered, that I wasn't counting down the days until I would expose his betrayal. I became an actress worthy of an Academy Award, maintaining the facade of our normal life while secretly preparing for its demolition. A week before the scheduled departure, Thad began packing for what he continued to call his business conference. I watched from the doorway of our bedroom as he carefully selected his most flattering clothes, linen shirts and tailored shorts that had never appeared at any legal conference I'd heard of. "Need any help?" I offered, stepping into the room. I picked up a blue shirt I had given him for his birthday last year. "This one always looks good on you." He hesitated, then nodded. "Thanks. That would be nice." I folded his clothes with care, placing them in his suitcase, while imagining him wearing them with Brielle on white sand beaches. Each item I touched felt contaminated now, part of a life he had chosen over ours. As I worked, I asked innocent questions about his conference, where exactly it was being held, what topics would be covered, which colleagues would attend. He answered smoothly, the lies flowing effortlessly. I marveled at his ability to fabricate details, wondering how long he had been practicing this skill. "You're sure you packed enough sunscreen?" I asked, knowing full well the tropical destination that awaited him. "I heard Los Angeles is having a heat wave. I'll pick some up at the hotel if needed," he replied, not missing a beat. "The conference is mostly indoors anyway." That night, after Thad fell asleep, I slipped out of bed and went to my closet where I had hidden my own suitcase. Inside were carefully chosen outfits, including a stunning red dress I had purchased specifically for the confrontation. There was something empowering about preparing for this moment, about taking control of a situation where I had been rendered powerless. I ran my fingers over the silky material of the dress, imagining the look on Thad's face when he saw me in it, thousands of miles from home, where he thought I would be waiting faithfully. I had told no one about my plan, except Maeve. At first, she thought I was joking. Then she worried I was having some sort of breakdown. "Are you sure this is the best way to handle it?" she asked during our lunch the next day. "Couldn't you just change the locks and have divorce papers waiting when he gets back?" I stirred my iced tea slowly. "I need to see his face, Maeve. I need him to know that I know. And I need that woman to know what kind of man she's really with. This isn't just about ending my marriage. It's about truth." Maeve reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Then I've got your back. What do you need me to do? Water my plants while I'm gone, check the mail, make it look like I'm still at home. I don't want him getting any warning if he calls to check on me." "Consider it done," she promised. "And Ainsley? Make him regret every lie he ever told you." As the departure date grew closer, Thad became increasingly distracted. He checked his phone constantly, worked later hours, and barely maintained our conversations. One evening, he received a call during dinner and took it in his home office, his voice a hushed murmur behind the closed door. When he returned, his cheeks were flushed with excitement. "Everything okay?" I asked innocently. "Just a case development," he said, his eyes bright with an emotion I now recognized as anticipation for his upcoming rendezvous. "Must be good news," I observed. He smiled, that charming smile that had once made my heart race. "Could be life-changing." The irony nearly made me laugh out loud. "Yes," I thought, "it certainly will be." The night before his departure, Thad was particularly attentive, guilt manifesting as affection. He brought home flowers and suggested we open a bottle of wine. He told me how much he would miss me during his conference, and promised to bring me back a souvenir. Each sweet nothing he whispered felt like acid on my skin. I wondered if he would say similar things to Brielle the next night, if he recycled his endearments as easily as his lies. 4 days will fly by, I assured him, raising my wine glass in a toast. 2 successful journeys. He clinked his glass against mine, relief evident in his expression. He thought I suspected nothing, that his deception had worked perfectly. In that moment, looking at his handsome face animated by secret joy, I almost pitied him. Almost. The morning of the flight, Thad was up early, double-checking his travel documents and calling a taxi. I made him coffee and toast, playing the role of supportive wife one last time. "Text me when you land," I said, straightening his collar at the door. "Of course," he replied, kissing my cheek. "Love you." 3 words that had once meant everything, now hollow syllables in the air between us. I smiled and waved as the taxi pulled away, waiting until it disappeared around the corner before closing the door. Then I raced upstairs to get ready. My own taxi would arrive in 2 hours, just enough time to prepare myself physically and mentally for what lay ahead. I showered, styled my hair in loose waves, and applied makeup with extra care. The woman who looked back at me from the mirror was beautiful, determined, and utterly unrecognizable from the trusting wife I had been just 3 weeks ago. I put on a comfortable but stylish travel outfit, saving the red dress for Bora Bora. After one final check of my passport and tickets, I locked our house and stepped into the waiting taxi. "Airport, please," I said, my voice steady despite the butterflies in my stomach. At the airport, I moved efficiently through check-in and security, all while scanning the crowds for any sign of Thad and Brielle. According to the itinerary I had found, they should have arrived about an hour before me. I kept my sunglasses on and a scarf draped artfully around my hair, not wanting to risk being spotted if they were still in the public areas. I found a cafe with a good view of the first-class lounge entrance and ordered a coffee, watching passengers come and go. And then I saw them. Thad in the blue shirt I had packed for him, standing close to a tall blonde woman whose face I recognized from Instagram. Brielle Summers in the flesh, even more striking than her photos suggested. They weren't touching, maintaining a professional distance in public, but the way they leaned toward each other spoke volumes about their intimacy. My hands trembled slightly as I raised my coffee cup, but I forced myself to breathe deeply. This was real. It was really happening. The evidence was right before my eyes. My husband and his mistress embarking on their romantic getaway, blissfully unaware of the storm that awaited them. When their boarding group was called, I watched them walk to the gate, still maintaining that careful distance. I waited until they had disappeared down the jetway before approaching the gate myself, my first-class boarding pass in hand. The gate agent smiled as she scanned it. "Enjoy your flight, Mrs. Blackwood." I smiled back. "I'm sure it will be memorable." I boarded the plane and made my way to row 4. Thad and Brielle were already settled in seats A and B, her by the window, him in the middle. They were chatting quietly, her hand resting casually on his arm. Neither of them looked up as I approached, too absorbed in each other to notice their new roommate. I took a deep breath and slid into seat C, right beside Thad. He was still looking at Brielle, laughing at something she had said. I stowed my bag under the seat in front of me and fastened my seatbelt with deliberate clicks. The sound finally drew his attention, and he turned to offer the polite smile one gives to strangers on planes. The moment his eyes met mine, his entire body went rigid. The color drained from his face so quickly, I thought he might faint. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. "Hello, Thad," I said calmly, removing my sunglasses. "Fancy meeting you here." Brielle leaned forward to look past him, curiosity on her face. "Is something wrong?" Thad remained frozen, staring at me as though I were an apparition. His panic was so palpable, I could almost taste it. "You must be Brielle," I said, extending my hand across Thad's paralyzed form. "I'm Ainsley Blackwood, Thad's wife of 10 years. The shock that transformed her features mirrored what I had felt when discovering their affair. Her blue eyes widened, darting between Thad and me in confusion. "Wife?" she echoed, her voice barely audible over the ambient noise of the cabin. "But he said you were divorced," I suggested. "Separated?" Just good friends? I'm curious which version he told you. Thad finally found his voice, though it emerged as a strained whisper. Ainsley, what are you doing here? I thought I'd join you on your business conference, I replied, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Or was it a legal retreat this week? I lose track of your excuses. A flight attendant approached, offering pre-departure champagne. I accepted a glass with a smile, while Thad shook his head mutely. Brielle sat rigid in her seat, still processing my introduction. No champagne, darling? I asked Thad. I thought we were celebrating. Isn't that what one does at the beginning of a romantic getaway? How did you? He began, then stopped, seemingly unable to decide which question to ask first. How did I find out? How did I get on this flight? How did I know about her? I took a sip of champagne, savoring both its taste and his discomfort. You really should be more careful with your email password, and maybe don't save flight confirmations in folders I can access. Brielle's shock was morphing into anger. You told me you were divorced, she said to Thad, her voice low but intense. You said the papers were finalized 6 months ago. Thad's head swiveled between us, a man watching his worlds collide. I can explain, he said, though his tone suggested even he didn't believe this was possible. Please do, I encouraged, settling back in my seat. We have a 12-hour flight ahead of us. Plenty of time for explanations. The other first-class passengers were boarding now, some glancing curiously at our tense tableau. Thad looked desperately toward the exit, but the cabin door had already been closed. He was trapped 30,000 feet from escape. I never meant to hurt anyone, he began weakly. And yet, here we are, I interrupted, with 2 hurt women and 1 very stupid man. Brielle was now going through her phone, pulling up messages and photos. You introduced me to your mother, she said, her voice cracking. She showed me your childhood photos. Was she in on this too? I raised my eyebrows at this new information. You brought her to meet your mother? The same mother who called me last week to chat about Thanksgiving plans? Thad closed his eyes, his carefully constructed lies crumbling around him. The plane began to taxi, the engines humming with mounting power, much like the tension in our row. Ladies and gentlemen, please direct your attention to the flight attendants for important safety information, came the announcement over the speakers. As the routine demonstration began, I leaned closer to Thad. You should pay special attention, I whispered, because when this plane lands in Los Angeles, you'll be in desperate need of an exit strategy. His eyes snapped open, meeting mine with a mix of fear and disbelief. For the first time in our marriage, I was the one in control, and we both knew it. The power shift was exhilarating. The plane accelerated down the runway, pressing us back into our seats. As we lifted into the air, leaving the ground behind, I felt something lifting from my shoulders as well. The weight of deception, the burden of not knowing. Whatever happened next, the truth was finally out in the open, soaring with us into the clouds. And we still had 11 hours and 45 minutes of flight time remaining. The first hour of our flight passed in excruciating silence. Thad sat rigidly between Brielle and me, his body language screaming discomfort. He had loosened his collar twice, refused the flight attendant's offer of drinks, and checked his watch compulsively, as though time might somehow accelerate if he stared at it hard enough. Brielle had asked to be moved to another seat, but the flight was full. She now sat angled away from Thad, her forehead pressed against the window, shoulders tense. I, meanwhile, accepted a glass of water and browsed the in-flight entertainment with deliberate casualness. Outwardly calm, inwardly churning with emotions I couldn't fully name. Vindication, yes. Sorrow, certainly. But also a strange sense of freedom. The worst had happened. The deception exposed. There was something almost peaceful about standing in the wreckage of my marriage, knowing that no more surprises could hurt me. We need to talk, Thad finally said, his voice low enough that only I could hear him. Now you want to talk? I replied, keeping my eyes on the screen in front of me. After months of lies? After planning an entire vacation with your girlfriend while still sleeping in our bed? That's rich, Thad. This isn't the place, he hissed, glancing anxiously at nearby passengers. Actually, it's the perfect place, I countered, finally turning to face him. You're a captive audience, with nowhere to run. Just like I've been a captive in a marriage that apparently ended without my knowledge. Brielle shifted in her seat, and I knew she was listening despite her attempt to appear detached. Thad ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I once found endearing, but now recognized as a tell when he was cornered. I was going to tell you, he insisted. After this trip, I was going to ask for a divorce when I got back. How considerate, I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Enjoy your romantic getaway first, then drop the divorce bomb. Were you planning to mention Brielle, or would that have been too much honesty for one conversation? Thad winced. You don't understand. Things between us haven't been right for years. We've been living separate lives, focused on our careers. Don't you dare rewrite our history to justify your cheating. I cut him off, keeping my voice level despite the anger building inside me. We weren't perfect, but we were partners. At least I thought we were, until I found the receipt from Saveur. Brielle turned slightly at this, her interest piqued. Receipt? Thad asked, momentarily confused. The dinner where you spent $342, I clarified. It fell out of your jacket pocket. That was my first real clue something was wrong. You went through my pockets? He asked, attempting indignation. Don't deflect. I found it by accident, but it led me to check other things, like credit card statements showing gifts I never received, like emails about this trip, like your entire double life, Thad. A flight attendant approached with the meal service, momentarily pausing our conversation. I ordered the chicken, Thad declined food, and Brielle requested the vegetarian option without looking up. When we were alone again, Thad leaned closer. I never meant for any of this to happen, he said, his voice softening with what I assumed he thought was sincerity. Brielle and it just developed. I didn't plan it. From beyond him, Brielle snorted softly, the first sound she'd made in over an hour. Something to add? I asked, leaning forward to see her. She hesitated, then turned to face us both. Her eyes were red-rimmed but fierce. He absolutely planned it, she said flatly. He pursued me for weeks. Coffee invitations, lunch meetings that weren't actually about work, constant compliments. He was very deliberate. Thad's face flushed. That's not— Don't lie, she interrupted. You transferred me to your department so we could work closely together. You requested me specifically. This was new information, and it hit me like a physical blow. Not just an affair of opportunity, but a calculated pursuit. I took a sip of water, using the moment to compose myself. How long? I asked, directing the question to Brielle rather than Thad. She met my eyes directly for the first time. We've been seeing each other for 7 months, but he told me he was divorced when we met. Said it had been finalized just before I joined the firm. I nodded slowly, pieces clicking into place. 7 months ago was when you suggested separate vacations for the first time, I said to Thad. You went to a legal conference in San Diego for 4 days. She was there too, wasn't she? I continued, not waiting for his confirmation. That was your first trip together. Thad's silence was answer enough. And all those late nights at the office? Those weekend golf games? I pressed. Not all of them, he admitted quietly. But some. The flight attendant returned with our meals. I mechanically went through the motions of unfolding my tray table and arranging my napkin, the domestic habits of a life that was disintegrating around me. The chicken looked appealing, but my appetite had vanished. What I don't understand, I said after the attendant left, is why you didn't just ask for a divorce, if you were so unhappy. Why the elaborate deception? Thad shifted uncomfortably. It's complicated. Is it the prenup? I asked bluntly. Were you trying to find a way around it? His face told me I'd hit the mark. Our prenuptial agreement had a fidelity clause. If either of us cheated, the other would be entitled to a significantly larger portion of our assets. We'd both insisted on it, ironically enough. So your plan was what, exactly? I continued. Come back from this trip. Tell me you want a divorce. Hope I never discover the affair. And split everything 50-50 per the original agreement? You make it sound so calculated, he protested weakly. Because it was calculated, Brielle interjected. Just like he calculated what to tell me about you. I turned to her, curious despite my pain. And what exactly did he tell you about me? She hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the conversation, but too angry at Thad to stop now. He said you were cold, career-obsessed, that you had an arrangement to live as roommates until you decided to formally separate, that you hadn't been intimate in years. A laugh escaped me, sharp and humorless. We had sex last week, Thad. Remember? When you came home with those flowers and said you missed me? Brielle's face contorted with disgust. She unbuckled her seatbelt and stood abruptly. I need the bathroom. We watched her walk away, then sat in charged silence. You're disgusting, I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. Not because you fell for someone else. That happens. But because you couldn't even be honest with either of us. You told her I was cold and distant while telling me you were working late. You had sex with both of us in the same week while planning a romantic vacation. Thad stared straight ahead, his jaw tight. I got caught up in something I couldn't control. Bullshit, I replied calmly. You made choices. Hundreds of them. Every day for months. You chose to pursue her, to lie to me, to book this trip, to pack those bags I helped you with. Don't pretend you were powerless. His face hardened. What do you want, Ainsley? To humiliate me? Congratulations. Mission accomplished. Want me to beg for forgiveness? Fine, I'm sorry. Want money? Take it. But what's the end game here? What do you hope to achieve by following us onto this plane? Truth, I said simply. I wanted the truth, and I wanted you to face me, to own what you did instead of slinking away to paradise while I sat at home wondering where our marriage went wrong. Brielle returned, her face freshly washed, but her expression no less troubled. She sat down without a word, pulling out her phone and headphones. The meal service concluded, and the cabin lights dimmed to simulate night as we crossed time zones. Passengers around us reclined their seats and closed their eyes, but sleep was impossible in our row. We sat in our private bubble of tension, 3 people connected by deception. After what seemed like hours, Brielle removed her headphones. I have questions, she said, looking past Thad to me, about your marriage, if you don't mind. I was surprised, but nodded. Go ahead. Was it really failing? Before this? She gestured vaguely between herself and Thad. I considered the question seriously. We had challenges, I acknowledged. Thad's law practice was demanding. My marketing firm took a lot of my energy. We probably took each other for granted sometimes. But failing? No. I thought we were navigating life together. She nodded thoughtfully. He told me you were emotionally abusive, that you controlled the finances and isolated him from his friends. My mouth fell open in shock. What? Thad sank lower in his seat. I never used the word abusive, he muttered. You absolutely did, Brielle insisted. You said she monitored your spending and criticized your friendships. You showed me texts where she was supposedly keeping tabs on you. I shook my head in disbelief. Our finances are completely separate, except for one joint account for household expenses. And the only time I ever questioned his friendships was when I suspected he was lying about them, which clearly I was right about. What about the texts? Brielle pressed. Show her, I challenged Thad. Show her these controlling texts I supposedly sent. Thad remained silent, his face a mask of discomfort. He can't, I explained to Brielle, because they don't exist. Or if they do, they're taken completely out of context. Brielle studied Thad's face, then mine. He also said you had agreed not to have children, but then changed your mind and pressured him. This hit me like a slap. We decided together to wait until our careers were established. Last year, I suggested we revisit the conversation since we're both approaching 40. He said he needed more time to think about it. I turned to Thad, a new realization dawning. Was that because of her? Because you were already planning your exit? He didn't answer, but his expression confirmed my suspicion. How old are you, Brielle? I asked suddenly. 28, she replied. And do you want children someday? She nodded slowly. Yes, Thad said he did too. Once he was in a relationship where it felt right. The cruelty of this particular lie stole my breath. Not just betraying our marriage, but dismissing our shared history and future plans to better appeal to a younger woman. Rewriting not just our present, but our past and potential future. He told me you were his soulmate, I told her quietly. On our wedding day, in his vows, he said we would grow old together, watching our grandchildren play in our yard. Brielle's eyes glistened with unshed tears. She looked at Thad with new clarity, seeing not just his deception of his wife, but the broader pattern of telling people exactly what they wanted to hear. I need to know, she said to him directly. Was anything you told me true? About your feelings? About our future? Thad finally spoke, his voice rough. I care about you, Brielle. That wasn't a lie. Care about me enough to book this trip while still married? To promise me a future while sleeping with your wife? To invent awful stories about her to make me feel sorry for you? She shook her head. That's not care. That's manipulation. The three of us fell silent again, the enormity of Thad's deception settling around us like a heavy fog. I felt a surprising sense of connection with Brielle, both of us victims of the same man's elaborate lies, both struggling to reconcile the person we thought we knew with the reality before us. I think I'm going to try to sleep, I finally said, reclining my seat slightly. We still have 7 hours before Los Angeles. Brielle nodded. Me too. Thad remained upright between us, a man stranded between the ruins of 2 relationships he had destroyed. I closed my eyes but knew sleep would be impossible. My mind raced with memories, re-examining every moment of our marriage through this new, tainted lens. How much had been real? How much had been performance? Somewhere over the Pacific Ocean, in the artificial night of the airplane cabin, I mourned not just the end of my marriage, but the death of the man I thought I had married. The Thad I loved had never really existed, or if he had transformed into someone unrecognizable, someone capable of calculated cruelty and breathtaking dishonesty. Yet alongside the grief was a flicker of something unexpected. Relief. The pain of knowing was infinitely preferable to the confusion of suspicion, and there was power in facing the truth, even when that truth was devastating. I glanced at Thad's profile in the dim light. His eyes were open, staring straight ahead at nothing. For the first time in our marriage, I had no desire to comfort him in his distress. His pain was entirely self-inflicted, the natural consequence of his choices. Instead, I found myself wondering about Brielle, about how a 28-year-old woman rebuilds after discovering her relationship was built on lies. I had 10 years of history to untangle. She had 7 months. Yet the betrayal was no less significant. As the plane continued its journey through the night sky, I made a decision. When we landed, I would not waste energy on revenge or prolonged confrontation. I would focus on my own path forward, on reclaiming the life that had been interrupted by deception. Thad had taken enough of my time and emotional energy. He wouldn't get any more. With that resolution firm in my mind, I finally drifted into an uneasy sleep, lulled by the steady hum of the engines carrying us toward an uncertain future. I awoke to the gentle nudge of turbulence, the plane dipping slightly before steadying itself again. For a blissful moment, I existed in the liminal space between sleep and consciousness, free from the reality of my situation. Then memory flooded back, and I opened my eyes to find Thad's seat empty beside me. He went to the galley to talk to the flight attendants, Brielle said, noticing I was awake. Trying to arrange different seating for the connecting flight to Tahiti, I think. I straightened my seat and checked the time. We were about 3 hours from Los Angeles. How long was I asleep? Maybe 4 hours, she replied. She looked exhausted, her earlier anger now tempered with resignation. I couldn't sleep at all. I'm sorry, I said, surprised to find I genuinely meant it. For all of this, she shook her head. You have nothing to apologize for. You're not the one who lied to everyone. An unexpected moment of solidarity stretched between us. Two women connected by the same betrayal. I reached for my water bottle, taking a sip to ease my dry throat. What will you do when we land? She asked. I hadn't thought that far ahead. My plan had extended to the confrontation, to the moment of truth, but not beyond. I'm not sure, I admitted. I booked a hotel in Los Angeles for tonight. I thought I might need some time to process before flying back home. Brielle nodded thoughtfully. I can't imagine getting on that connecting flight with him now. Are you going to? She looked out the window at the endless expanse of clouds below. No, she said firmly. That part of my life is over. I just need to figure out the logistics. I felt a surprising urge to help her. This woman who had unwittingly become entangled in my marital drama. Before I could respond, Thad returned, his expression grim. The connecting flight is full, he announced, avoiding eye contact with both of us as he took his seat. No chance of changing our arrangements. That won't be necessary, Brielle said coolly. I'm not going to Bora Bora. Thad's head snapped toward her. What do you mean? I mean, I'm not spending a week in paradise with a liar, she replied. I'll stay in Los Angeles and book a flight home. Don't be hasty, he said, lowering his voice. We should talk about this privately. Oh, there's nothing to discuss, she said with finality. And there's no privacy to be had, as you well know. Thad turned to me then, desperation in his eyes. Ainsley, can we have a moment alone, please? We're on an airplane, Thad, I pointed out. Where exactly do you propose we go for this private conversation? The back of the cabin, he suggested. Just for 5 minutes. I considered refusing, but realized I did have things to say to him that were better said without an audience. Fine, I agreed. 5 minutes. We made our way to a small open area near the galley where flight attendants prepared service items. It wasn't private, but it was as good as we were going to get at 35,000 feet. What do you want? I asked, once we were standing face to face. This has gone far enough, he said, his voice low but intense. You've made your point. You've humiliated me completely. Are you satisfied now? I stared at him in disbelief. Is that what you think this is about? Humiliation? Revenge? Isn't it? Following us onto this plane, creating this scene. I didn't create anything, I interrupted. You did. With your lies, your double life. I just exposed it. And what good has that done? He demanded. Has it fixed anything? Has it made you feel better? I considered his question seriously. Yes, I replied honestly. Not because you're suffering, but because I'm finally seeing clearly. For months, I've been questioning myself, wondering what was wrong with our marriage, why you were distant, whether I was imagining things. Now I know the truth. That clarity is worth everything. His expression softened slightly. I never meant to hurt you, Ainsley. You have to believe that. But you did hurt me, Thad. Deliberately and repeatedly. Every lie was a choice. Every night with her was a choice. This trip was a choice. I shook my head. You don't get to rewrite that now. What do you want from me? He asked, sounding genuinely confused. An apology? Divorce? What's the end game here? Right now, I want you to stop making this about you, I said. Stop focusing on your discomfort, your embarrassment, your inconvenience. For once, think about the pain you've caused, not just to me, but to Brielle too. She didn't deserve to be part of your deception, any more than I did. He ran a hand through his hair, that familiar gesture that once endeared him to me. So what happens now? When we land? Do we all just go our separate ways? That's exactly what we do, I confirmed. You made your choice long before today. Now, we're all making ours. And the Bora Bora reservation? He asked. It's non-refundable. I laughed, a genuine burst of amusement at the absurdity of his concern. Is that really what you're worried about right now? The money? He had the grace to look embarrassed. No, everything's falling apart, and I'm trying to figure out next steps. Next steps are simple, I said. When we land, I'm going to my hotel. You and Brielle can sort out your own arrangements. When I get home, I'll be contacting a divorce attorney. Given the circumstances and our prenup, I suggest you prepare yourself for that conversation. The mention of the prenup made him wince. Ainsley, about that. We could handle this amicably, couldn't we? Without dragging up all the details? You mean without mentioning your infidelity that violates the terms of our agreement? I clarified. Why would I do that? To protect you? To save you money? For the sake of our history, he attempted. For the good years we had. Those years don't mean what I thought they did, I replied. Not anymore. A flight attendant approached, asking if we needed anything. We both declined, and conversation effectively ended, returned to our seats. Brielle was typing something on her phone, which she quickly put away as we settled in. Everything okay? She asked, her question clearly directed at me rather than Thad. As okay as it can be, I replied. The captain's voice came over the speakers, announcing our initial descent into Los Angeles in 30 minutes. Flight attendants began their final service, collecting trash and preparing the cabin for landing. The mundane routine of air travel continued around us, a stark contrast to the emotional turmoil in our row. I checked hotels, Brielle said quietly, leaning toward me. Everything decent near the airport is booked because of some convention. I nodded, processing this information. Where are you planning to stay? She sighed. I'm not sure yet. Maybe I'll just go to the airport for the next flight to Chicago, even if it means waiting overnight. The thought of this young woman, betrayed and stranded, spending the night alone in an airport, stirred something protective in me. Perhaps it was misplaced maternal instinct or simple human compassion, but I found myself making an impulsive offer. My hotel has 2 queen beds, I said. You're welcome to share the room if you'd like, just for tonight, until you sort things out. Surprise flickered across her face. Really? You'd be okay with that? After everything? You're as much a victim in this as I am, I pointed out. More, in some ways, since you didn't even know what you were getting into. Thad shifted uncomfortably beside us. That's unexpected. It's not for you to comment on, I told him firmly. The plane descended through layers of clouds, the sprawling expanse of Los Angeles gradually coming into view below. As we neared the ground, I felt a strange sense of grounding as well, as though the physical return to Earth was anchoring me after hours of emotional turbulence. We landed with a gentle bump, the plane taxiing to our gate as passengers around us immediately reached for phones and belongings. In our row, no one moved, the momentum of our confrontation leaving us temporarily immobilized. We need to talk about practical matters, I finally said. Luggage, transportation, next steps. I'll get a separate hotel, Thad announced. I'll take a taxi from the airport. What about the connecting flight? Brielle asked. Are you still going to Bora Bora alone? He looked torn, the prospect of a solo, romantic getaway clearly unappealing. I haven't decided. Well, I suggest you do, I said briskly, because Brielle and I are getting our bags and leaving. What you do is your business now. As passengers began deplaning, the 3 of us gathered our belongings in awkward silence. We walked through the terminal without speaking, followed signs to baggage claim, and stood at the carousel watching suitcases emerge on the conveyor belt. My red suitcase appeared first, then Brielle's blue one, and finally Thad's larger black bag. We collected them without comment and headed toward the exit. I guess this is it, Thad said, stopping before we reached the doors to ground transportation. I guess it is, I agreed, feeling strangely calm. For what it's worth, I am sorry, he offered. Not just for getting caught, but for the choices I made. Save it for your lawyer, I advised. Then, unable to resist one parting shot, "Enjoy Bora Bora. I hear it's lovely this time of year." Brielle and I walked away, leaving him standing alone with his luggage and regrets. Outside, we joined the taxi line, the California sun warm on our faces after hours in recycled airplane air. "Are you sure about the hotel room?" Brielle asked, her voice uncertain. "I feel like I'm imposing after everything." "I'm sure," I confirmed. "To be honest, I'd rather not be alone right now." She nodded in understanding. "Me neither." When our turn came, we loaded our bags into a taxi, and I gave the driver the hotel address. As we pulled away from the curb, I caught a glimpse of Thad still standing where we'd left him, looking lost and diminished. "How long were you married?" Brielle asked as we merged into traffic. 10 years, I replied. "Together for 12. "I can't imagine," she said softly. "I've only known him for 7 months, and I feel like my world is falling apart." "It's not falling apart," I told her. "It's rearranging itself around the truth. There's a difference." She considered this, then offered a small smile. "That's a good way to look at it." At the hotel, we checked in and were shown to a comfortable room with 2 queen beds as promised. I set my suitcase on the luggage rack and sat heavily on one of the beds, the exhaustion of the day finally catching up with me. "What a bizarre situation," I commented, gesturing between us. "Who would have thought we'd end up here? If you'd told me yesterday I'd be sharing a hotel room with my boyfriend's wife, I'd have said you were crazy," Brielle agreed, sitting on the opposite bed. "But here we are. Here we are," I echoed. An awkward silence fell between us, both acutely aware of the strange intimacy of our circumstance. We were, after all, connected by our relationships with the same man, relationships that had overlapped in time, if not in legitimacy. "I have a confession," Brielle said suddenly. "On the plane, when you were both talking at the back, I looked through his phone." I raised my eyebrows in surprise. "And his passcode was your anniversary," she said with a humorless laugh. "Ironic, right? Anyway, I found messages to another woman. Someone named Vanessa." The floor seemed to drop from beneath me. "What?" Brielle nodded grimly. "I took screenshots and sent them to myself before he could delete them. They weren't explicit, but they were definitely flirtatious. Plans to meet for drinks next month." "So there's a third woman," I said, the revelation somehow both shocking and utterly predictable. "He was already lining up your replacement." "Looks that way," she confirmed. "That's actually why I decided so quickly not to continue to Bora Bora. It wasn't just about you, though that would have been enough. It was seeing that he was already moving on from me, too." I shook my head in disbelief. "He's incapable of honesty. With anyone, including himself," Brielle added. "He really seemed to believe his own lies sometimes." We ordered room service, neither of us having eaten properly on the plane. Over Caesar salads and mineral water, we began to compare notes, filling in gaps in each other's understanding of the man we had both cared for. "He told me you were cold and career-obsessed," Brielle said. "But he told his mother you were the perfect wife, always supportive of his career." "He told me he was working late, building his practice for our future," I countered, "while telling you he was trapped in a loveless marriage." With each revelation, the portrait of Thad grew clearer. Not a man torn between 2 loves, but a habitual deceiver who tailored his persona to whatever served his immediate needs. The Thad I married, the Thad who pursued Brielle, the Thad who was already texting Vanessa. They were all performances, masks he wore and discarded at convenience. "We should compare photos," Brielle suggested, reaching for her phone. "I bet he recycled romantic gestures too." She was right. The bracelet he had given her for her birthday was nearly identical to one he had given me 2 years earlier. The restaurant where he had first kissed her was the same one where he had proposed to me. Even the trip to Bora Bora had been my dream destination first, before he appropriated it for their romantic getaway. "It's like he only has one playbook," I observed, half amused, half disturbed by the patterns emerging. "A very effective one," Brielle noted. It worked on both of us. As evening fell over Los Angeles, our conversation shifted from Thad to ourselves, our careers, our backgrounds, our hopes. Brielle was smart and ambitious, with a dry sense of humor that emerged as she relaxed. In another context, we might have been friends. "What will you do now?" she asked as we prepared for bed, the day's emotional marathon finally taking its toll. "File for divorce," I said without hesitation. "Build a new life. Focus on myself for a while. Do you think you'll ever trust someone again?" I considered the question seriously. Eventually, this wasn't about love failing. It was about one person's dishonesty. "I won't let that poison my future." She nodded thoughtfully. "I like that perspective." As I turned out the light, I felt an unexpected sense of camaraderie with this young woman who had unwittingly shared my husband. We were, in our own way, survivors of the same storm, emerging battered but unbroken. "Good night, Brielle," I said into the darkness. "Good night, Ainsley," she replied. "And thank you for not hating me." "How could I?" I answered honestly. We were both deceived by the same master manipulator. The only person I hate is the one who's probably sitting alone in a first-class lounge right now, wondering how it all went so wrong. Morning light filtered through the hotel curtains, painting soft stripes across the room. I woke before Brielle, feeling strangely rested, despite everything. For the first time in months, I wasn't carrying the weight of uncertainty, of suspicion, of trying to make sense of inconsistencies in my marriage. The truth, however painful, had brought its own form of peace. I showered and dressed quietly, then ordered coffee from room service. When it arrived, the aroma roused Brielle, who sat up with her blonde hair charmingly tousled. "What time is it?" she asked, reaching for her phone. "Just after 8, I replied, pouring her a cup. "Sleep okay?" "Better than I expected," she admitted, accepting the coffee gratefully. "No dreams about murdering Thad, so that's a win." I laughed, surprised by how natural it felt. "Always a good sign." She sipped her coffee, then set it down decisively. "I booked a flight home while you were in the shower. It leaves at 2 o'clock. "That's good," I said, feeling a strange mix of relief and disappointment. Our unlikely alliance had been a buffer against facing my new reality alone. "What about you?" she asked. "When are you heading back?" "I haven't decided," I admitted. "Part of me wants to get home and start dealing with everything. Lawyers, paperwork, telling friends. But another part wants to hide out here for a few days." Brielle considered this, then set her cup down with sudden determination. "What if you didn't go home right away?" "What do you mean?" "I mean," she said, her eyes lighting up with an idea. "What if you actually went to Bora Bora?" I stared at her. "Alone? To the romantic resort Thad booked for you two?" "Why not?" she challenged. "It's already paid for. Non-refundable, remember? And what better way to show him that he hasn't destroyed you than to enjoy the vacation he planned for his affair?" The audacity of the suggestion made me laugh. "That's insane." "Is it, though?" she pressed. "Think about it, Ainsley. You've just discovered your marriage was a lie. You're about to go through a divorce. When better to take some time for yourself in a beautiful place, especially when your cheating husband is footing the bill." I shook my head, but couldn't dismiss the idea entirely. "I don't know. Look, I can't go with you," she continued. "I need to get back to Chicago, deal with my apartment, my job. But you, what's waiting for you at home right now except pain and logistics?" She had a point. Going home meant facing our empty house, telling friends and family about our impending divorce, beginning the grim process of dismantling our shared life. The thought was exhausting. "Wouldn't it be weird, though?" I asked, "being in that overwater bungalow, knowing it was meant for them?" "Reclaim it," Brielle suggested firmly. "Make it yours. Get massages, drink fancy cocktails, swim in crystal-clear water. Start your new life with something amazing instead of something sad." I felt a smile spreading across my face as I warmed to the idea. It would drive Thad absolutely crazy. Exactly, Brielle exclaimed. And not that revenge should be your primary motivation, but it's a nice bonus. I pulled out my phone and checked the flights. There was one leaving Los Angeles for Tahiti that evening, connecting to Bora Bora the next morning. The same flight Thad had booked for himself and Brielle. I could actually do this, I realized aloud. You absolutely could, Brielle confirmed. And you definitely should. We spent the morning making arrangements. I called the resort to confirm the reservation was still active, changing it from 2 guests to 1. Brielle helped me shop for a few additional items I'd need. A wide-brimmed sun hat, extra sunscreen, a beach cover-up. By noon, my impromptu vacation was set. I still can't believe I'm doing this, I said as we ate lunch before Brielle had to leave for the airport. That's what makes it so perfect, she replied. Thad would never expect it. He probably assumes you're curled up in a ball somewhere, devastated. Instead, I'll be in the overwater bungalow he booked for his mistress, I mused. Life really does have a sense of humor. Brielle raised her water glass in a toast. To unexpected friendships and reclaiming what's yours. I clinked my glass against hers. And to new beginnings. As we prepared to part ways, exchanging phone numbers and promises to stay in touch, Brielle handed me an envelope. What's this? I asked. Screenshots, she explained, of the messages with Vanessa and some of the ones between Thad and me where he talked about you. You might need them for your divorce proceedings. I accepted the envelope, touched by her thoughtfulness. Thank you. For everything, really. Meeting you, bizarre as the circumstances were, has made this whole nightmare a little more bearable. I feel the same way, she admitted. When I first saw you on that plane, I thought my life was over. Now I feel like maybe it's just beginning. Like we both dodged a bullet, even if it hurt like hell getting out of the way. We hugged goodbye in the hotel lobby, an embrace between women who had formed an unlikely bond through shared betrayal. As her taxi pulled away, I felt a curious mixture of emotions, sadness for what I had lost, anxiety about the future, but also a growing sense of possibility. The life I had planned was gone, but perhaps the one waiting for me would be even better. That evening, I boarded the flight to Tahiti alone, my red dress packed carefully in my suitcase for another occasion. As the plane took off, I imagined Thad back in our home, wondering where I was, perhaps even worried. I hadn't responded to his texts asking when I would return. Let him wonder. Let him worry. I was done organizing my life around his feelings. The flight to Tahiti was long, but I spent it productively, making lists, researching divorce attorneys, and beginning to sketch out what my new life might look like. By the time we landed in Papeete the next morning, I had a clearer vision of my future than I'd had in years. The final leg to Bora Bora was on a small plain that offered breathtaking views of the island. A lush green mountain rising from an impossibly blue lagoon, surrounded by a ring of white sand and coral. It was even more beautiful than the travel magazines had promised, and, for a moment, I felt a pang of sadness that I was experiencing it alone, rather than with a loving partner. But I quickly pushed that thought away. Better alone than with someone living a lie. A representative from the St. Regis met me at the tiny airport, escorting me onto a boat that would take me to the resort. As we skimmed across the crystal-clear waters, the gentle breeze in my hair, I felt something shift inside me, a loosening of the tension I'd carried for months, a tentative opening to joy. The overwater bungalow was spectacular, spacious and luxurious, with a glass panel in the floor revealing colorful fish swimming beneath, and a private deck with steps leading directly into the lagoon. The enormous bed was covered in flower petals, a bottle of champagne chilling beside it. The romantic touches that had been arranged for the illicit couple now seemed like a celebration of my independence. I changed into a swimsuit, poured myself a glass of champagne, and stepped out onto the deck. The sun was high, the water impossibly inviting. Without hesitation, I descended the steps and slipped into the lagoon, the warm water embracing me like a blessing. Floating on my back, gazing up at the perfect blue sky, I felt tears mixing with the salt water on my face. Not tears of sorrow, but of release. That evening, I put on the red dress and dined alone at the resort's beachfront restaurant. The staff, noticing my solitary state, were attentive without being intrusive. When the waiter asked if I was waiting for someone, I simply smiled and said, "No, just enjoying my own company." After dinner, I walked along the beach, the sand cool beneath my feet, the Southern Cross bright in the sky above. I thought about how differently this trip had turned out from what Thad had planned. He had intended it as a romantic escape with his mistress, perhaps even as a farewell to his marriage before returning to ask for a divorce. Instead, it had become my journey of reclamation. On impulse, I took a selfie with the moonlit water behind me, looking happier and more peaceful than I had in months. After a moment's hesitation, I posted it to Instagram with the caption, "Sometimes the best journeys are the unexpected ones." Bora Bora 4-1. New beginnings. Within minutes, my phone began buzzing with notifications. Friends expressing surprise, asking questions, offering support, and a text from Thad. "Are you serious? You're at our resort." I laughed out loud at his indignation, at the possessiveness of our resort when he had booked it for himself and another woman. I didn't bother responding. Instead, I turned off my phone and returned to my bungalow, falling asleep to the gentle sound of waves lapping beneath me. The next 5 days became a retreat of self-discovery. I snorkeled among colorful fish, hiked part of the island's volcanic peak, learned to paddleboard, and spent hours simply reading on my private deck. I made casual friendships with other guests, including a 60-something couple celebrating their 40th anniversary who adopted me for several excursions. "You're so brave," Patricia, the wife, told me after I shared a simplified version of my story. "When I was your age, I would have gone home and cried for a month." "I did my crying on the plane," I admitted. "Now I'm trying to figure out what comes next." "Something wonderful," she predicted, patting my hand. "The universe has a way of rewarding courage." On my last evening in paradise, I received a text from Brielle with a photo attached. It showed her having dinner with a handsome man, both of them smiling broadly. "Remember I mentioned my ex, Declan? We're giving it another try. Sometimes you have to go backward to move forward. Hope, Bora Bora, is magical. You deserve it." I smiled, genuinely happy for her. We had both been set free from Thad's web of lies, finding our way back to authenticity. I sent her a photo of the sunset from my deck with the message, "Happiness looks good on you. Declan is a lucky man. Bora Bora is healing my soul one wave at a time." Later that night, I got another text. This one from Maeve. "You won't believe this. Thad got fired yesterday. Apparently, the firm has a strict policy against partners dating subordinates. Someone, cough, Brielle, cough, filed a complaint on her way out. Karma's working overtime for you, honey." I felt a complicated mix of emotions at this news. Part of me, the part still raw from betrayal, felt vindicated. But another part felt oddly sad for the man I had once loved, whose poor choices were now dismantling his carefully constructed life. Not sad enough to intervene, but enough to acknowledge that his punishment was proportionate to his actions. On my final morning, I woke before dawn and sat on my deck watching the stars fade as the sky lightened. I thought about the strange journey that had brought me here, from finding that restaurant receipt to confronting Thad on the plane, to befriending his mistress, to reclaiming this beautiful destination for myself. None of it had gone according to plan, neither Thad's plan nor mine. Yet somehow, I had ended up exactly where I needed to be. As the first golden rays of sun touched the lagoon, I made myself a promise. I would take this same strength, this same determination to honor truth and authentic living, back into my regular life. The divorce would be difficult, the rebuilding challenging, but I had proven to myself that I could face painful realities and still find beauty on the other side. I dove from my deck into the clear morning water for one last swim, feeling the cool silk of it against my skin. When I surfaced, I looked back at the luxurious bungalow that had been meant for a betrayal, but had instead hosted a rebirth. In the early light, it seemed to glow with possibility. 6 months later, I stood in the doorway of my new apartment, admiring the simple, elegant space I had created for myself. The divorce had been finalized with surprising speed. The prenuptial agreement's infidelity clause, leaving Thad little room to negotiate. I had used part of the settlement to start my own marketing consultancy, focusing on clients whose values aligned with mine: transparency, integrity, authenticity. Brielle and I still exchanged occasional texts. She and Declan were now living together, and she had found a position at a different law firm where she was thriving. Thad, I heard through mutual friends, had moved to another city to restart his career, his reputation in Chicago tarnished beyond repair. As for me, I was dating again, cautiously, honestly, with clear eyes about what I wanted and deserved. The man coming to pick me up tonight was different from Thad in all the important ways: straightforward, genuine, kind. We were taking things slowly, building a foundation of trust before anything else. On my bookshelf sat a small glass bottle filled with sand from Bora Bora, a reminder of the journey that had taught me so much. Beside it was a framed photo of me on the island, smiling into the camera with the turquoise lagoon behind me. Not the selfie I had posted to shock Thad, but a different one taken by Patricia's husband on my last day. In it, my face is serene, my eyes clear and direct, my posture straight and confident. A woman who has faced deception and emerged stronger, who has transformed betrayal into an opportunity for growth. The doorbell rang, and I took one last look in the mirror before going to answer it. The woman who looked back at me was familiar, yet changed. Wiser, braver, more authentic. She had learned that endings can be beginnings, that pain can lead to growth, that the collapse of one dream can make space for another. As I opened the door to greet my date, I carried this knowledge with me like a talisman. The future was unwritten, full of possibilities I couldn't yet imagine. But whatever came next, I would face it with the same courage that had carried me through the storm of betrayal to the calm waters of self-discovery. "Ready?" he asked with a warm smile. I nodded, stepping forward into my new life. More than ready, and I was. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And drop a comment below. What city are you watching from? And if your heart tells you to, feel free to leave me a tip on Buy Me a Coffee. Just check the first pinned comment. Thanks for keeping me company and for the coffee, and I'll see you in the next story.